So for the video today, I'm going to be talking about all things HRT. I did a video quite some time ago, almost a year ago now, where I talked about different types of HRT. But what I'm going to talk about today is what you can expect from HRT, how it will affect.
So yeah, what you can expect. So this is something I kind of wanted to cover before. So basically, I mean, taking HRT, hormones, hormone replacement therapy. But I think it's quite an interesting subject, especially anyone out there who's interested in transitioning or wants to know about how HRT affects trans women. But I'll just say before it starts, it affects everybody different. I think that it's your own personal choice if you choose to go down that path. And especially when it comes to HRT, I would say it's definitely the best idea to have a doctor involved whenever starting HRT, because it is a very powerful thing, taking hormones, and you should really have your bloods checked and things like that if you choose to do it.
So with HRT, I started taking my HRT back in 2011. And so I've been on it now for 9 years this year. And I've got to be absolutely honest with you. I started taking HRT when I was 36 years old.
So yeah, 36 years old. She started transitioning at 36 years old, which you can start transitioning at any age. You know, some of us transition later in life. Some of us transition very young. If you transition before you go through puberty, the reason there's so much benefit is that you won't get, say, like broader shoulders. You'll maybe get more hips. Your bone structure will be different, which is very important, because if you do hormones after, a lot of the things, because you're going through puberty, you're transitioning through your puberty. A lot of what happens through your puberty you can't reverse. So what it is basically, if you transition before puberty, you're going to have a more, for male to female, you're going to have a more feminine shape. Whereas if you transition after, which I transitioned after, you are stuck with those things about that are very masculine about yourself. You can make them less, but you can't get rid of them.
So I'd already really missed that sweet spot, which is around your late teens and through your 20s. But having said that, all is not lost. If you're transitioning in your 30s, 40s, 50s and upwards, HRT will have some effect on you.
So, you know, if you're an older person and you're thinking about transitioning, don't worry about your age. Anything is possible. You can transition, and the effects will still, you know, if you take the correct hormones and do everything correctly, you'll have a good transition if you want to use HRT to transition.
Let's talk about psychological. This is a difficult one for me to talk about, because I know that there has been changes, but it's sometimes difficult to really pinpoint what those have been. I know a lot of people have said that they felt an instant sense of calmness.
I remember when I started to transition, I noticed more things about how my feelings were and things like that. So what she's talking about with the transitioning, you know, I'll just give you one example. Like I found that I like chocolate more. I mean, I don't notice it the same, but when I first started to transition, I felt like chocolate was like amazing. Like before I'd eat chocolate and I'd like, yeah, it's chocolate, I like it. But then when I transitioned, I felt like I had a bigger thing with it, a bit more emotional around it.
When they started HRT, I have to say that I'm not sure whether I did, but I think it's because of where I was in my life at that point. It caused me a lot of anxiety because I was in a relationship and I was splitting up with somebody, and it was a massive life change. So yes, although you do get a sense of well-being from being on estrogen, I didn't get a sense of calmness, not at that stage.
So I remember before I started taking hormones, like when I would drive, I get quite. I definitely one of those drivers that kind of got more aggressive. Like people like try to push in front of me or try to race me or something. I did get kind of. I was one of those drivers that kind of got kind of angry about it and how I felt. Um, but when I transitioned, all that kind of went away. I kind of was less felt like I was fighting for things. I didn't feel the aggression towards things.
I've always been a good driver. Everyone thinks they're a driver, but I've always thought of myself as a good driver, and very spatially aware, able to navigate really easily, really good at remembering places and names and stuff like that.
But I believe there's a way men and women view differently. I can't remember exactly what it was, like spatially aware and how women see and how men see, and there's something like how the way men see is different or something. I might be wrong about this, but I'm sure I've heard something in the past, and and that's why there is a difference when we drive. Like women see things differently to how men see things. Um, but I would definitely say a lot when it comes to driving. I did notice a lot. So not just the aggression, but I think even my skills as a driver. I think I don't when I drive now. I'm not. I don't have that aggression. I don't have that kind of wanting to race or anything like that. I take things slower. So maybe I don't need to be aware about certain things because I'm being more cautious in general. And maybe that's a female thing, a more awareness, so more cautious and take things slower. You don't need to race.
Another thing I found is that I am more of a perfectionist, much more than I used to be. And I used to just get the job done as best as I could. One example was decorating my bedroom, and painting the walls and things. I will take longer now than I ever used to before to get it absolutely right. And things.
Yeah, I find myself caring more about the environment that I live in. I get quite stressed with myself when if I haven't cleaned something. Like my room at the moment, I'm not really happy with it. um, so I like to keep things a bit more neater, but I still have that side. Well, I mean, I guess in life it's so easy to let things go, and you end up kind of letting your room and things um, go in a certain way. Um, but yeah, I definitely feel like um, since I transitioned, I'm definitely more. I do care more about things. As a perfectionist, I don't know. I always was a little bit like that before. I was always a bit of a perfectionist anyway. Like I would never go buy flowers before. Like as a boy, I would never think about going and buying flowers and wanting to put flowers in my apartment and things like that. But since I transitioned, it's like I started to buy flowers. I started to put them in my apartment. Um, I haven't had any recently, but I do feel like I want to do that. So I have that drive, which I would never care about flowers as a boy. It would never be an issue. But as as myself, and ever since I started HRT, I definitely got more. I mean, HRT definitely changes your thinking, your perception of things, and you do start, caring about things that as a boy you think, why bother, but as when you transition, you start to care more about those things.
So the next thing I want to talk about is your emotions. For me, there was a major impact on my emotions, and in literally from starting HRT, it was almost instantaneous. In fact, I would say that it was the first signs that it was working for me before anything else, before there were any physical signs or anything at all. The emotional changes were the things I noticed first of all. Yeah.
I think this is a big thing. I'm gonna say actually, which is what you said about emotions. I definitely got a lot more emotional. I don't know why I didn't even say so there on. I got a lot more emotional when I started taking hormones. I definitely cry a lot more. I definitely get upset more over things. Like I said earlier on, I was talking about, I watched Brokeback Mountain, I cried. As many movies, I will cry if there's a sad story. So I definitely say HRT does affect your emotions, and it definitely made me feel more, I react more to like sad things in films and TV shows and things like that. Just caring more about where I am, but also like caring about the people around me, thinking about how their emotions will be. Like, you know, if I did something, thinking about if I said this, or sometimes if I said something, I'd get upset if I said something to someone and kind of regretted it later on. Kind of a feeling like, oh, I shouldn't have really said that to those people because I don't want to make them upset. I don't want to do that.
And I really wasn't aware these are my emotions taking control of my senses, essentially. I was making silly decisions, saying stupid things, and really letting my heart take over the way I.
Yeah, that's one of the issues, because the thing is, you end up where you are more emotional. But the thing is, maybe because you can't control it, and I think that's what happens. You can't control it when you start off on hormones, so you end up kind of like it's ruling your heart is ruling your head, and then you're making these mistakes. So mistakes you're making these like caring about some things. It's important, but because you can't control it, because you're not used to it, you end up kind of you're letting your heart rule your head, and then you're not thinking logically about things. And I don't think that women are like that. What I think it is when you're transitioning, you you're not used to these hormones, so they take over too much. And then when you try to go through normal life and deal with situations, they're controlling you. And so what's happening is um, you're doing things that you really wouldn't do normally, kind of thing, or you shouldn't be doing. Whereas a woman who's already got those hormones anyway is used to controlling them, so she doesn't do that. So, like, what I mean is, maybe females do have a more emotional perspective on life, but when you're a male to female when you're transitioning, especially in later life at 36, you're not used to those hormones, and that is why you made those mistakes.
All right, so the next area that we're going to talk about is physical. And I know this is, when you think of HRT, this is what you think of first and foremost, and this is what you want to really work. And just like with me, with everybody else, I felt exactly the same. You wanted it to have profound physical effects on your body. And
Yeah, that's true. You do. I mean, I can't deny that when I started to transition, I really wanted the effects a certain way, and I think in some ways I was expecting that. But the reality is, you can't change a lot of things that have gone from your first transition, which is your puberty.
it's so, so important. But it's hard sometimes to separate expectations from reality, because sometimes they're quite different. I think the first thing that you need to really expect is that taking HRT and getting good physical effects from HRT takes a long time. I think that you get the most.
Yes, I mean, it does take a long time. It's not a magic pill. You're not going to take hormones and then just overnight. It takes time, and hormones do help, but they're not perfect. So, you know, everybody's different as well. Your body, it'll transition. Everyone will have a different type of transition. Um, but I think if you go into it with a positive mindset, and you just adapt yourself as you transition. Like for me, going into it, I would look at certain girls, certain women, and think I want to look like she does. And then as I transitioned, I kind of realized that certain things are not going to change, certain way I'm not going to look, and I kind of adapted to those kind of things, and then slowly I went into the way that was best for me, and I'm really happy with my transition. You will see changes. You'll always see you. I mean, like I said, watching like on this kind of thing, like doing YouTube, and you see in the videos, you do see how you transition, how you change from on the video. I do have a video that I did, maybe I think it was 6 years ago now, 5 or 6 years ago, and I can see a big difference in that video. Um, but but the thing is, the changes become less and less over time. Yeah, and so the changes over time, they do kind of the less and less. But I still see things, even in the last few years. I mean, I've been transitioning for 5, 6 years, and I see changes. When it comes to hormones, I mean, normally after the first 3 months, I noticed changes and things like that. Definitely your skin becomes way more softer. Hair growth becomes less. I had a lot more hair before I transitioned. And you definitely notice like your breasts, you start to get breast tissue and things like that.
The hair on my face, because I needed a lot of laser hair removal, like a lot of laser hair removal. And after a year, I was only about 1/3 of the way through it, if that. So I noticed that the hair regrowth was a lot slower. And also, if
Just on the point about like removal of hair, well, I do now. I use an epilator, which is very painful. At first, it's not so painful now. When I first started transitioning, it was quite painful. And what, like laser hair removal, I started to do laser hair removal when I transitioned. Normally on mine was my face because which really hurt. But you know, your hair definitely is softer. It's easier to remove. I remember epilating as a boy, and it would really hurt. Really, I'd have blood come out when I would do my hair. So it was definitely didn't want to come off the hair, and it might have been as well because it was early stage when I first started epilating. But definitely after I transitioned, after I've become like I am now and been on my hormones, it's a lot easier to remove the hair.
with regards to hair on my head, it took a lot longer. I think I didn't really notice. I started growing my hair out almost straight away, and I didn't really notice any kind of change in the condition of my hair until over a year of taking HRT. It was getting longer, but my hair is. I've got quite a bit of hair, but it's very fine, so I've got a lot of fine hair.
I'm going to say that with my hair, it definitely took me a long time to get control, and I still don't think I've got control of it. I'll be honest, I've been bleaching it, so it's not perfect. I have considered going back brown, so I mean, if you've got any opinions on that in the comments, let me know. But I have considered going back brown because bleaching your hair does definitely destroy your hair, and I'm struggling. But I think naturally, I think it's a lot better. It grew a lot better before I bleached it.
What will HRT do to your body shape? Wow, that is the $1,000,000 question, and that's the thing that's so important. I think the first thing to remember is that unless you start HRT while you are in puberty, unless you do that, your frame, your hips, your shoulders.
Yeah, like I've been saying from the start, really, you can't change that. I mean, she talks a little bit about bone structure here as well. I think we covered this really. I'll go to waistline. You can't change your bone structure. And unless you transition before you're before you're a teenager. I mean, so if you transition before your puberty, that's the only way you're going to be able to control that.
Whereas with guys, their waistline is kind of at belly button height, I guess you could say, just above the hips. With women, you'll find you might get a bit of, well, I did, a bit of an indent or my waistline above the belly button. So it's like my lower body starts just above my belly button.
Yeah, I mean, just about that really quickly. Yeah, my waistline is the same. It's improved a lot since I transitioned. It's not perfect. Um, so there is ways you can increase the waistline. So I think she said like she just kind of accepted it and she's moved on from that. But I there is ways you can do it. A lot of the time, unfortunately, the ways to do it are not good. You know, they inject things into your hips and things like that. Think about some of these ladies that have really big hips and stuff like that. It's not silicone and stuff that they inject, but there you can do like fat transfers and you can have surgeries like Brazilian butt lifts and things like that that can help. Um, I'm happy with what I've got on my hips, but I would like larger hips. So it's something that I'm considering. But you know, yeah, when you take hormones, you will get fat distribution, and it will help, and you will have more hip. But again, it's just like breasts. You know,
much more sensitive.
You might need some more. Might need some surgery.
And you get the breast buds and everything. And I was on these forums and I was reading all of these stories about how trans women just were walking into doors and banging into things and they were in agony because of their breast buds and how painful it was. I didn't really find it that painful.
I must admit, when I first started hormones, I did notice my breasts. They were. I did have more sensation and sometimes soreness. So it is true that you do get that. So she didn't get that bad apparently, but you do get that. Your breasts when they grow on hormones, if you unless you're very lucky, normally it depends on your family. If you've got women in your family that have large breasts, then you're more likely to have larger breasts. And obviously, the smaller them, you probably have smaller breasts. But I mean, I was kind of the way with my breast development, I kind of just felt like they grew to about an A cup, which is very small, maybe just under an A cup to be honest. They were very small, and I knew I wanted to have surgery, so I did have breast surgery myself as well, and so much more happier to actually have some breasts.
But what I found is that I haven't really gained a lot of fat on the side of my hips as such, not a huge amount. There's definitely some there where there wasn't any before, but I still have the dimples in the side of my bottom, although they are much more shallow now, and it's mainly around the buttocks and the bottom of the buttocks, if that makes sense, the bottom of your behind, that has gained a lot of weight, which helps give me the impression of more curves.
But you will get something. I have it. Am I happy with it? No, I'm not completely happy with it. I mean, it's okay, but I do know that it is possible to have surgery to have that corrected. So I think it's worth considering that if you want to have more shape. But I would definitely say if you're considered about like doing your hips, try to go down like with fat transfer and other surgical ways of doing it. Don't think about silicone. There is a silicone that you can do, but it's extremely dangerous and it can actually damage you and stuff like that. So I've had friends who've had that done and they really regret having silicone put in.
So there you go. I just wanted to give you a brief rundown of what my experience is. I suppose if you transition in your 30s, 40s and upwards, you're going to relate to this a bit more, and it kind of gives you a bit more of an insight into what you might be able to expect from taking HRT. And there is this saying, which is your mileage may vary, which I see all over the forums, but it's true. It might do. Some people will get more fat on their hips, you might have bigger breasts. I mean, it is a waiting game. But one thing is absolutely true, and that is every day that you take HRT, no matter how small the changes are, it's one less day of you being your previous self. You're never going to look like you used to again.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point. Yeah, every day you're going one more step closer to being yourself. Um, So yeah, I mean, I only want to just add that when it comes to transitioning, like, yes, we're all individuals. We all transition differently. We have different goals, different things. My goal was to present as myself. I wanted to be like this. You might not want that. You might want to be, I don't know how you want to present to the world. I think, like I had in the comments earlier on about having role models and things like that. That's important as well. So it all depends. Everybody's individual and very different. But I thought it was quite an interesting video to look at because she covered a lot of subjects. I think she did really well. I will put her a link for her channel underneath. So if anyone wants to check out some of her videos, you can do. So if you're watching it live, thank you. If you're watching this later, well, thank you as well. You know, it all means a lot. But yeah, I do these live shows quite regular now, so look out for them. Best way to do that is to hit the bell icon because you'll get updates when I'm doing them.